Kyle here from allmediareviews.blogspot.com, the All Media Reviews podcast, and I'm going to try to do at least part of, if not going through the whole list, it might just be half of it or two-thirds, I don't know, of the 2016-2017 albums of the year list. I can just certainly briefly as possible note, I've done albums of the year for, this would be the 11th year, kind of, actually 12 years, going back to 2006. And on YouTube and recording, that kind of thing, I've done them for the last 3 or 4 years, I want to say. But I usually don't include the entire list just because it's too much stuff to babble on about and put into a video. Given this is a podcast format, I think it's probably, at least for the most part, worth going through most of the list, if not the whole list. Ironically, I think this past year has been, I would say, the weakest year in recent memory, but there haven't been that many. There weren't that many albums that I got to hear, at least, that were addictive, and I compare it to other years right now, and right now, I can't remember the last year that was this thin. 2006 maybe, but in history has been kinder to 2006. 2006 or maybe 2013. But at least with 2013 and 2006, they have a couple really good albums at the top. And 2013 has been noteworthy, and it's gained more depth. Now, that's obviously the advantage of time and everything, so in 2016, 2017, or 2017, for that calendar year, we might see in a few years, 5 or 10 years from now, there'll be add more depth and quality to the year. But as a whole, 2017, just from memory, just by comparing, just didn't have as much. I figure that it happens every once in a while, looking at different years of calendars and stuff like that, of album calendars. There's some years in the late 70s, early 80s that were like that. I struggle to find, 20 albums that I really like, and 1 or 2 especially that were just some of my favorites of all time. And this year is kind of, teetering on that as well. Anyway, let's just get into this since I've been babbling for a few minutes. So, I just go down the list. I'll just briefly comment on some of these since I don't have a lot to say about them. Tuxedo's second EP, or their an EP they put out, Fucks with the Tux. I liked it. Had some songs that made the album, some songs that did make the second full-length Tuxedo album, but nothing amazing. I probably listened to it twice. Black Map, Mark Engels from Dredge's band's second album, In Droves. I like parts of it, but the Tool element to it kind of hurts my feeling, and I remember the vocals not being anything I got that into, and so that's why it ended up this far down, although I can say that there are other albums that I listened to that I would prefer it over some albums, maybe not above it, or I don't know. Anyway, but if you like Tool especially, there were a lot of Tool elements, but it does have Mark Engels and has his guitar tone at points. Anyway, In Droves. Number 44, the ongoing concept album's called Places. This was a weird album. It was recommended from my friend Josh, a.k.a. that drummer guy, and while the combination of styles I liked, it kind of just overstayed its welcome after listening to about half an hour. I only got through it like twice. It's kind of heavy at points, twangy, combining, it's like, I don't call it might be metal, but then combining like Southern blues and that kind of thing. But and the vocals were, I remember it kind of reminded me of that band, the Middle Class Rut, in a way. The vocals were a lot of yelling, and the style I struggled with, but I didn't hate it. I mean, I remember on certain songs I would notice certain parts I liked, so that's why it's still on the list. But anyway, keep on going. Number 43 was Jessie, Ware with Glasshouse. There's like 3 or 4 tracks, a couple of the singles that were good. The rest of it, the criticism was she was kind of selling out and going too mainstream, and even if it was sort of like kind of light, like mellow mainstream. Some of the songs remind me of Sade and my wife, but I don't know. I mean, I can't say I prefer this album to any of her other records. Not that I'm obsessed with her, but her first couple albums, her first album especially, had a couple really good songs. That song "Running," I think it was. But yeah, I mean, not bad, but I don't know how much I'm going to be revisiting in the future. I'd like to see her live, and maybe some of the songs would do more for me live. But again, the singles were decent. They had a couple decent hooks in here and there, but yeah, Jessie Ware's new album Glasshouse is only sort of in the... It ended up at 43 for that reason. Do Make Say Think, Stubborn Persistent Illusions. I like Do Make Say Think. I've always liked them since I've heard them. But I remember this record just kind of sleeping through it. I mean, it was okay, kind of, par for their course, and it's been a few years since the last Do Make Say Think album. They're post-rock with mostly instrumental, if I'm not mistaken, with a lot of chamber instruments. But I probably need to spend a little more time with it, but just based on listening to it a couple times, it only found its way to 42. 41, the Barnum Meserve, When All Is Lost. This is the second full length from the Barnum Meserve. And I liked it. They added some new elements, but they still kept some of the trumpet. And the vocal style is pretty much the same, which is a distinct style. The singer sort of yells, but in a clean way. But I remember a little bit like their debut album it was like 2 years ago. Or it was maybe last year, actually. It kind of having a sameness to it. And I want the Barnum Meserve. I want to love them. And their first EP or two, I was like, this band's really intriguing. It's sort of gothic, chamber, hard rock, or I don't know what you'd call it exactly. But yeah, I can't say their new album, When All Is Lost, is really even as good as the EPs, and it probably doesn't have any songs. There were a couple of really good tracks on that first album last year, the self-titled, but they supposedly going to release 3 albums in like 3 or 4 years, so the next album we'll see what happens. Number 40, Umphrey's McGee's Zonkey. It's a live kind of mashup covers, a cool creative way to do things. Of course, Umphrey's McGee's probably been doing this since their inception live, but they finally got it on recording, on an official recording and release. And there's a lot of good, mixtures of like Michael Jackson, Hall & Oates. I think Hall & Oates is in there. Like Tears for Fears or Aha. And then they have Primus and it's been a long time since I listened to it, but I remember enjoying it. I'll still go back to it, certainly. And if you don't know Umphrey's McGee and you like a lot of these classic rock songs that they might be covering, songs from the 80s, it's worth checking out. And if you obviously are a fan and you're a fan of their live shows, then it's definitely worth checking out, even though you've probably heard a lot of these mashups. But there's like a dozen of them called Zonkey. All right, 39, Radical Face SunnMoonnEclippse EP, which is all one word, and they spell the word sun with 2 N's and moon with 2 N's and eclipse with 2 P's. I'm kind of guilty in that I remember enjoying this, but it was just an EP and it was kind of short, but it was a little different than the typical Radical Face stuff. But I enjoyed it. I think I need to spend a little more time and go back to it. I just went on my research and revisiting 2 albums for the end of the year. I didn't get a chance to revisit it. It's just a matter of time. I wanted to get it up as soon as I could. But yeah, it's a pretty good EP. Not as good as some of the EPs from this year, but SunnMoonnEclippse from Radical Face. Thundercat, Drunk, number 38. Yeah, it's got the one song, I think both with Michael McDonald and Kenny Loggins, or maybe separately. I can't remember. I think it's one song with both of them. It was sort of Thundercat's homage to yacht rock in a way. A lot of this is kind of smooth, chill, jazzy kind of stuff. A lot of bass lines and stuff. Some odd vocals, and a bunch of different people came in. Thundercat, of course, I know best from working with Kimbra, and he's kind of a mixture of like a studio hound and a producer, and then he does his own music. But he's a very talented musician. He plays bass, and the bass is featured very prominently on this record, and a lot of people loved it. So I don't know how much I'm going to revisit it in the future, but I certainly would. But I don't know how far it will go for me. So let's see. Moving on. Big Wreck, Grace Street. 37. It was good, but again, I kind of thought that the last record was better, but it was a similar idea. They wrote a lot of songs. 4 or 5 of them are really catchy. But I guess they're kind of repeating themselves a little bit to me. I'm glad Big Wreck's back, and I probably could revisit this record and maybe enjoy it more and like trying to evaluate it on its own. But they've released 3 albums since they came back. Big Wreck. I think the last one was their best, which I'm forgetting the name now. But Gray Street probably deserves a little more time as well. But I guess my overall take is that it doesn't vary that much from their last record, and I'm not sure it's even as good, even though their last record had like 18 songs on. This album had something similar to that. Anyway, moving on, 36, Capital Cities Swimming Pool Summer EP. Couple really good tracks on this. It just was only, whatever it was, 4 songs, and I couldn't put any higher, and I'm really looking forward to whatever they do as a full-length next. But good use of a horn, I think, on one song. But I don't think it's Spencer Ludwig. Because of course, Spencer Ludwig, the trumpet player from Capital Cities, is now doing a solo career. And I don't know if he's actually with them. But whoever they got to replace him was really good. It was just a few songs. It's an EP. A lot of the EPs are like that, unless they blow me away. Anyway, 35, Blackfield V or 5. I had a lot of hope for this record. And while it wasn't awful, and having Steven Wilson more involved helped, I can't say I loved it just because, it didn't have enough sort of standout tracks. I think it's called April, the one song that was originally an Aviv Geffen song on an album, on his solo albums from a few years ago that recorded, is really melancholy and is one of the best Blackfield songs they've done. They have a couple other songs. One's talking about your rescue team is almost there, and I'm blanking on it because I don't have a lot of this stuff in front of me to kind of use as a source. So this recording's going long enough that I know it's going to be more than one part. So maybe for the follow-up parts, I'll have to try to grab that stuff. But it's not bad. I would say it's better. I prefer it over the last 2 records, but the first 2 records stand out way more than it. It's the same idea, but I don't know. I don't know if the songwriting's as strong. Let's see, 34, Danny Cavanagh's Monochrome. A lot of people are raving about this album and saying it's better than the new Anathema record, and I don't feel that way. I like it, but a lot of it kind of is, I'm saying, drags. There's a couple pieces. There's one piece that I can tell was probably written for Anathema, and wasn't like received. They didn't want to record it, so he did it on his own. And it's the one with the segue. Again, I'm not remembering it, but I don't have that stuff in front of me, unfortunately, to do this. But yeah, Monochrome. It's a good record, but it's very kind of more. I don't say more acoustic, but at times it is more acoustic and more ballady. I do like Annika van Giersbergen being on it, although she has her band Vur, which I haven't listened to that album, so it didn't even make my list. But I guess Monochrome is decent. I'll go back to it here and there, but I tried listening to it a few times and I thought it's okay, but not amazing. I don't prefer it over Anathema's new record, so a lot of people feel opposite to that, or not exactly the same. Tuxedo II, the second Tuxedo record. There's like 4 or 5 songs that are really fun on this record. I kind of feel like I want to prefer it over the first Tuxedo album. Now I'm sort of on the fence and saying they're about equal. Back in Town has got to be my favorite track, though. But the wife really enjoyed it. We got to see Tuxedo live. But I guess I kind of see Tuxedo as having that sort of dance, kind of funky groove style that, it's going to be almost, I'm saying, predictable. The one thing I do remember, though, about this record from listening to it over the summer is that the horns really add a lot to it. And so I probably wouldn't have even put it this high if they hadn't. But I didn't get attached to it. I just listened to it I listened to it 5 or 6 times. Anyway, let's see. Dave Kerzner's Static. And this is an album that I probably won't want to revisit more. But I think, like his last album, was it New World? It's so long that it's a little bit of a chore. It doesn't flow exceptionally well. Now, on the flip side, I've listened to it 2 or 3 times, And there's a lot of moments I enjoy, especially being reminded of Kevin Gilbert at points. There's 2 or 3 songs. The last epic is, at times as well, has a lot of Kevin. Now, Dave Kerzner, of course, played with Kevin Gilbert in the Thud era, and he played with him with, I believe when they did, I want to say he was with the Giraffe era when they did Lamlets on Broadway at Prog Fest 94. But he's had some other projects, Sound of Contact, he's done, and he's, anyway, the first album, New World, from a few years ago, I don't even remember where it was on my list, but I remember a lot of it sounds like David Gilmour, Pink Floyd, David Gilmour. His voice is very David Gilmour-esque, which isn't inherently a bad thing, but I kind of am reminded it's a little bit like the Tame Impala singer that I keep on thinking I'm hearing David Gilmour at points. And the writing, there's some moments I really enjoy. I don't know. I'm not sure if... I wish he'd write kind of a more stripped-down record, and I probably would get more addicted to it, because I should love the guy. I do enjoy his music and his influence, of course. And a lot of it kind of sounded like Ray Wilson, having listened to Calling All Stations recently, and then the podcast from Tabletop Genesis. And when Ray Wilson's and Neil Morris's voice. So, I mean, the vocals, his voice changes at points, but I don't know. I don't know. More time, I suppose. And it's just a long record. I think it's probably close to 70 minutes, which is not that different in length than the previous album. So people are loving it, and I can understand why. I just can't say I love it, but I will definitely want to spend more time with this and New World again, just because his connection to Kevin Gilbert alone deem me want to take in more of his music at points. Rachel Flowers, number 31, Listen. It's a great debut album, very jazzy at points, very proggy, very ELP-like, also Miles Davis-like. I think she actually covers a Miles song, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, it's not too long, but she's a virtuoso, kind of a prodigy, savant. And I'm curious to see what she'll do in the future, because this is a very impressive debut album just for her first outing. Number 30, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, Flying Microtonal Banana, which King Gizzard has now already released 3 albums in 2017, although one of them would be for next year, because they just released one a couple weeks ago in December, or in late November, rather. Or like maybe it was like a week ago, I can't remember when it was. But this album has, of course, Rattlesnake, and I've been just checked them out this year. They're not a bad band, but at the same time, their style is sort of a little hard to take in large doses, and their albums seem to be quote-unquote long, or the fact that they're releasing so many albums. They've released like 8 albums in like 5 years. And the vocals are weird. He always sounds like he's singing through like a plastic tube. Very kind of froggy almost. But, I mean, they're good. There's some interesting psychedelic moments. I think my comparison to Pepe Deluxe in many ways is valid. I think that they really can't compare to Pepe Deluxe. Pepe Deluxe is exact opposite in their prolificness. They take their time and make sure things come out the way they want, and the production is just pristine, whereas King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, while they become like this hipster darling band, people love them. All the records are coming out on vinyl and everything, it seems like, or most of them. I don't entirely follow why everyone's obsessed with them, but they've been marketed well, I guess. But at the same time, they always put out some music that I like. Some of the songs are interesting, so this album is no exception. There's an interesting energy to it, you know, so that's why I finished at number 30. So that's part 1. I'm going to maybe stop and then go on to part... I'll probably end up being 3 parts. Thank you for listening, watching, even though you're not watching anything, subscribing. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, and we'll see you next time.